Hey everybody, hope you're having a fantastic day. In this video, I'm going to be talking about whether going to a larger company it will bring you more income or less. And I want to talk about this topic because someone left a somewhat nasty comment in my previous video because of a big misinterpretation. So I wanted to clarify that and explain this. And that's the topic that he had this nasty kind of response to. And so, this guy, he's anonymous, but his username's You Don't Know Me. And I could tell by the comment that he wasn't just intentionally being nasty. He was just maybe emotionally reacting to something. And he did say he liked some of my other advice in other videos. So I know he wasn't just trying to be someone who lashes out and attacks. So let's dive into this topic and what exactly happened. So in that video, the main point, and if you watch the video, 99% of the video is not about that topic. But I mentioned something very small on that topic, and he seemed to really latch onto that and get, feel like that was the main part of the video and kind of say that was inaccurate. So the main video was about how you shouldn't just chase prestige for happiness in life. You shouldn't chase the prestige of a logo or a big tech company to work for and sacrifice a lot of other stuff like your happiness, your passion for the work, and all this other stuff just because of that, to impress people you don't even like. However, if you watch the video, that's really the main point. Like I touch on it numerous times. But I mentioned something very small about how, even if you work at these big companies like Amazon, that doesn't mean that you're a high-paying executive. You could be a factory worker or a janitor or event level coordinator that's making very little. And so I wanted to clarify this for him just to clear it up, but also, if anyone else wants to learn more about earning more money, it'll kind of help explain. And so he was like, that is completely wrong. Big companies pay more. And he was claiming that I was inaccurate in saying that small companies pay more and big companies pay less, which I don't know if I even said that in the video. I rewatched it, but apparently that was the implication, and he really latched onto it and really did not like it. And so he was basically saying like, he had this one experience in his life, and that proves that bigger companies pay more. And his story was that he used to work for a smaller SEO firm or agency, and then he went to a Fortune 500 company and doubled his income. And that allowed him to get more promotions, and the prestige of that will help him get more jobs in the future. Now, if you actually watch the video, I actually mentioned stuff that, if anything, support that. Later in the video, I mentioned how, there are some benefits to the prestige beyond just impressing people. And one of those could potentially be to, pack that in your resume so that later on it will help you in your career, because hiring managers and, from the people I've networked, they do look at that type of stuff. I've heard that and I've talked to them. So if anything, I agree with him on that point. But here's the thing. That's a one-off situation. My knowledge of it has come from networking with hundreds of people in those spheres. And so the first thing that you should never really do is just say, anecdotally, this happened for me, so that's always the case across the board. That could have been a case where you went from SEO firm to Fortune 500 company. I do not disagree with that, but that's a one anecdotal situation, and just because it happened for you doesn't mean it happens for every other situation, because there's tens of thousands of companies there, many of which who fit that mold of big company or small company, which is still a very broad term. What does that mean? There's tens of thousands of these companies, and some fit into the 10,000 plus employee bucket, some 1,000 plus employee bucket, and then others 500 plus. So which one would you consider big or small? Some people would consider anything above 200 employees big. So there's this wide range all the way up to 10,000, 20,000 employees, like a Microsoft or a Amazon. So where do you actually draw the line? And so to even begin to really nail that down, it can never be more than a generalization because of how many companies are out there and how each company is different and may compensate and pay people differently. However, if we were to generalize based off my own knowledge and experience, doing a lot of networking and so forth over the years with various people across various different industries, I would say the answer is it depends. So I would say, generally speaking, it depends based off the industry. It depends based off the role and skill set you're offering, and it also depends based off the company itself. And I'll give you an example. Finance is an industry that just generally pays more. If you're a project manager in airlines, and this is actually a true story I'm thinking of, versus a project manager in finance or high tech, that one's going to be paid a lot more, even if it's generally the same responsibilities. Second, of course, job roles matter. So just because one person made more money in SEO in that SEO firm and then moved to Fortune 500 doesn't mean that if another person in a different role, let's say engineer, programmer, UX designer, went from that small agency or a similar small agency to the Fortune 500, would see the same effect. Because the roles differ enough for there to be different dynamics of supply and demand. So it could be different. It could be skewed. But generally speaking, bigger could or could not mean more or less. I would say, generally speaking, in terms of the agency versus in-house realms, you do get a little pay bump moving from agency to in-house, whether that's a smaller or bigger or equal size in-house opportunity. So that's another part of the equation. Now, the final part that's also very important is the exact type of company. So just because it's big and recognizable doesn't just automatically mean that it is higher paying. And a great example of this would be a legacy company like Disney. From what I've heard, from who I've networked with, and the data that you can find, some of these old established companies, even though they have 100,000 employees or however many, and they're recognizable and really big, oftentimes the pay is surprisingly not so good because it's such an old company and they're not really generating that much revenue. However, if you compare that to something like a Microsoft or Amazon, different story. Now also keep in mind, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, when people think about this, they assume, wow, some of the biggest companies in the US must be paying well. Well, when you actually dig under the surface, Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 doesn't necessarily mean that they're as big or profitable or successful as you think. With 1,000, that's a large number. And so the variance is very, very big. You could have a company that's a Amazon on there, but you can also have a company that sells that has factory equipment or sells some type of metal supply kit for some very niche telecommunications service, and they're like a B2B company in that Fortune 1000 list. And even from there, they may not be spending much money on paid advertisement or revenue. So in conclusion, I think the point is, if at all possible, what you should do is, rather than use broad generalizations or assumptions, it's best to choose the company in particular so that it's not a broad range or broad group or broad bucket, but a specific company with a specific name, And then you go to websites like payscale.com, glassdoor.com, um, salary.com. Another great one is levels.fyi. And then you take that and use that salary data as well as your networking data from former and current employees to get a real sense, an accurate sense of what's going on. So once again, I wanted to clarify that point in my previous video. The main point of the video was not to chase prestige alone, because that would not guarantee happiness. But it seems like I may have latched on or implied something unintentionally. And I understand that no matter what I put out, there's always going to be someone who has some point. But this one seemed to be a generally honest a point of feedback that I wanted to clarify, so I did. And I think the big point here is that you don't want to generalize and even say, you know, bigger companies in general are pay more. You just don't know. It just depends on the company, the industry, the job role. So it's best to parse out that specific brand, that specific company name, and figure out the details. Because sometimes it may, sometimes it may not. And it's best not to draw those conclusions or make those assertions. And of course, maybe it was implied or assumed that I did. And I think in this video, it's clarified. You want to use those websites as well as proper good networking skills to figure out those specific details. And just to talk more about the prestige thing, that was inspired off of a website called breakinto.tech, which covers in more detail kind of the insides of the tech industry. And one of the articles was about this the owner of this website who broke into these companies after being a kindergarten teacher. And after he did and a lot of work, he realized, wow, I was just chasing it for the prestige and I'm not as happy as I thought it would be. So don't miss the main point of the video. I hope that'll help clarify, and hopefully, you know, that helped. Sending you a lot of love, and hopefully we move forward with happiness and positivity here.